UFC 308 is just around the corner from Abu Dhabi. We've just figured out this is an early card between the three of us. We thought it's at the later time. But no, European fans are treated to an early one. I believe this one's on pay-per-view for you lads as well. Welcome to my world, every single pay-per-view event. I do the honorable thing, guys, and buy the pay-per-view over here so I can praise it if it deserves to be praised, or I can give out stink about it if I deserves to be given out stink about it. So that's where we're at. But I don't think we're going to be giving out stink too much about what fights we have on the 308 card, especially at the top of the card where Ilia Topuria defends his featherweight championship against Max Holloway. Robert Whittaker takes on Hamzat Chimaev. We have a big fight in the light heavyweight division as well between Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic, which could have some title implications on that fight as well. Boys, how are we doing today? Sean Sheehan and Paul Brown here with me. We teased everybody with when the three of us came on for one preview. Then Paul had technical difficulties and Sean, he couldn't make it, but we're here together as one big happy family again. Paul, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm all good, yeah. I'm sitting here with a brand new kind of webcam, and I've had my brand new laptop repaired. So I only bought the bloody thing 2 months ago, and it decided not to start taking up any audio for the last couple of weeks out of the blue. But all is good now. All is good. I've a ring light sitting here close to me that might just start changing color or flickering, but that'll be the least of me worries.
We'll have to put one of those flash warnings up on the screen or something like that. Well, at least you have some honest technical difficulties. Sean Sheehan, technical difficulties are surrounded your world as well. Hopefully nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, I got
you are here. You are here.
I'm here. Yeah. Well, so apologies to the Q&A audience for being slow. I was only about 14 hours late with the Q&A, so it wasn't too bad. But we're back. So
we're back. We're back with a bang, and it's going to be a big bang in the main event on Saturday night, lads. Obviously a fantastic fight on paper, but I have a couple of questions that I have myself that I'm hoping to kind of hash out here over the course of the prelim. And I guess the first question will be surrounding that main event and surrounding Max Holloway. And look, we know this is a fantastic fight on paper. I'm really looking forward to this fight. But, I ask myself, and I've been asking myself about this fight, is this completely necessary? Like, was it completely necessary for Max to kind of get himself prepared for the BMF title against Justin Gaethje, and then, cut weight again, get back down to featherweight? I feel personally he would have been better off, staying at lightweight. I think, he was even ranked in the top 5 or 6 after that win against Justin Gaethje, and there was a couple of great fights up there. But alas, Paul, we see ourselves with Max Holloway in the main event fighting again for the featherweight title at 145, back down on weight, not looking all that sprucey in interviews and the lead up to this as well, which for obvious reasons, obviously cutting massive amount of weight. But, we've heard lots of stories in the past about fighters who, Max has gone from fighting at featherweight, jumped up to lightweight, and now he's back down again. And that influx of weight, it doesn't normally suit fighters. Would that be a worry for you? And do you think Max has made the right decision here in stepping in against a really dangerous opponent as well as Ilia Topuria?
It's definitely one of the reasons that I would be concerned for Max going into this. As regards to the two guys as fighters, I've been going back and forth on who I think will win, and stylistically who kind of comes out the better of the pair. I think they both bring problems to each other's specific styles. They both have the kryptonite that works on the other guy, but the weight is a bit of an extra sort of a problem that muddies the whole picture. So I mean, as you mentioned, he went up, and here's the thing that he did differently to the first time he went up in weight. He did it correctly. He looked that little bit sturdier this time. The first time he just took a fight at lightweight on relatively short notice against Dustin Poirier. It was to step in for Khabib, wasn't it? And he just he didn't bother, changing his physique at all. He just decided to fight at 155 pounds. So he had a featherweight frame going into that. And we could see the difference because Poirier had come up a lot earlier from that featherweight division, and he had the few fights to settle in at 155 pounds. And in that fight in particular, he looked that little bit more jacked than usual and more durable. And he put a beating on Holloway a little bit, and no one had really done that to him. This time around, when he went up to the weight class and he went to fight Gaethje, you could see that he just looked that little bit more solid. But what he also did very, very well, and I remember listening to him and his coach speaking on his YouTube vlog series, was that he didn't just focus on bulking up. He focused on maintaining his speed, and it was very evident in the fight. He looked sharper, quicker, as well as being sturdier and more durable than Justin Gaethje. And that's what won him that fight. Now he's going back down, and he won't have that speed advantage against Ilia Topuria. Topuria is quicker than him. So I don't physically, I think that's just that's where the question mark lies for me now with this fight, because there's things about both fighters that make me think, oh, well, he could win it because ABC, whatever. But when I look at that question that you're after raising there, that's one big concern I have about Holloway going into this. Yeah, I don't think he is an elite featherweight fighter anymore, whereas he could well be an elite lightweight fighter.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. It's a big red flag that's hanging over Max Holloway, Shawnee, for this one. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the whole situation.
Yeah, I don't agree with the last part there about him not being an elite featherweight fighter anymore. There's like probably 2 featherweights in the world better than him. Maybe we'll throw one or one.
Well, I'll rephrase. I don't think he's capable of being the best featherweight fighter in the division anymore. I think he might have just outgrown the division. I think he's definitely one of the best in the division, but I just don't think he's capable now. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hoping I'm wrong because I want him to win. But
I guess Max Holloway at lightweight right now, I think, is a more efficient and better fighter than a Max Holloway maybe at 145, depending on, I guess, who he's fighting. It's a tricky one. Shawnee, I'll let you in.
Yeah, depending on who he's fighting, definitely. I think he's a better chance of beating Topuria than he does of beating Makhachev. But anyway, that's another discussion for another day, I suppose. A lot of people do seem to think he's going to win. A lot of people are picking him, even though, the lads are giving in their picks today. There's a lot of Max Holloway picks in there. A lot of Max Holloway picks coming in there. Though I'm glad you brought up the weight thing first, because that was one of my biggest thoughts coming in here. But then I was looking through, as you were talking there, his record. It's never really hurt him, has it? I think at featherweight for a good while, he hasn't looked on the lead up in the week, even like 2 weeks out, he hasn't looked amazing. Now, there was one fight, correct me if I'm wrong, but one fight didn't happen. Remember that Bisping thing? And there was one, so there was that incident.
That was the Khabib fight. Yeah, he was meant to fight Khabib.
Well, yeah, was it? Was that one? Yeah.
Yeah. And he was slurring on camera, wasn't he? He was booked to fight Khabib, and he was slurring on camera.
Oh, so that was at 55. Well, that takes away that argument. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think he looks bad again this week. But he's gone to a decision so many times. He's fought 5 rounds. I'm looking here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times he's been in the 5th round. That's a whole lot, right? And he's never really shown any adverse reaction, or hasn't. Cardio has been a plus for him rather than a negative. The difference, I think, within this fight, and not necessarily a difference negatively or positively, but I think he'll need to use it in this fight. I think the way he beats Ilia Topuria is he puts a high pace in him. He takes what Topuria can give him, or avoids maybe what Topuria is trying to give him, and then overwhelms him with his pace, with his volume and everything like that. So if he's not 100% coming in here, and as well, as you said there, Paul, the difference is now he has properly gone to 155, properly put on the size, and it was a proper 155er, whereas that was never the case before. And now he's coming down from that, trying to get down to be a proper 145er when that fight happened in April. So it was a good while ago, but at the same time, there was talks of him maybe fighting for the title or maybe not fighting Topuria. So was this a plan since April to get back down here? That's another part of it as well. Obviously, we're going to talk more about the fight in general, but I think that's. I saw a clip of Ilia Topuria in his house. I don't know if you saw it or not, but he's a fucking. It's like the Batcave or something for like a modern day fighter. It's like these big fucking rooms where he just gets slid into, and there's a fucking hyperbaric chambers taking a shit and everything. Like, it's fucking insane what he has in there. Like, and if you're not 100% against that guy, you're going to have problems. So I definitely think it's never played a factor before, but could it in this one? It's definitely a question that needs to be asked, I think.
Yeah, it is, because look, you talked about all the decisions that Max Holloway, and he's up there, I would assume, in cage time in the UFC. He's absorbed, for as a fact, the most significant strikes, I believe, off of any fighter in the UFC currently right now as well. And I've asked the question a couple of times before with Max Holloway, is like, when is going to be enough? When is he going to absorb that strike that is going to send him down and knock him out? Like, it's going to come eventually. We haven't seen it. We've been expecting it, but coming in here against Ilia Topuria, you're talking about the epiphany, Paul, of a heavy hitter, a guy who's got fire in both of his hands, who's not afraid to close the distance and land. And I think, we'll get into the fight in a little bit, but he's definitely coming in and he's going to get his chin tested. And, it plays a factor into this whole weight cut as well. And has he done too much too soon? And will it affect him? And will it affect his chin or his ability to be able to perform? I mean, there's two questions here, ones that we'll find the answer out, and I think I know the answer already. I don't think it will be major. Will his chin get tested and stand the test? And will he be able to continue that high pace that Sean suggests he should be doing throughout this fight too? History suggests that he will, but looking at the stats, looking at the figures, something's got to give at some time here for Max Holloway, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, the stat that was going around in the lead up to UFC 300 was that Max Holloway had fought so many times and so many long fights and had never been dropped. He got dropped once, didn't he, against Gaethje? Was it the Gaethje fight when he got dropped? He sat on his backside and popped back up. Am I right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. And then they didn't count it as an official thing on the UFC stats. And he came out afterwards. He said, "What are you talking about? Of course I got dropped." He got sat down for a split second and bounced back up.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Stats like that are very impressive, but they're the type of thing that they don't last forever. If you keep fighting, you're eventually going to get cracked. You're going to get dropped. Then you're going to get knocked out. And then once that happens once, it tends to be something that it's more likely to happen going forward. So yeah, the question is going to be over his durability. A lot of it being the fact that he has changed his body now from what he's done before, and he's coming back. So that's a big test. And he's in there against probably the hardest hitter that's been in that division, I think, since Conor McGregor was in it. Like Topuria, the things he does in his fights, he's very dynamic, but he's those shots are just ridiculously concussive too. We saw what he did. The Volkanovski fight, obviously now, like Volkanovski was coming in there off the back of a knockout as well. So I just watched that back today, and I kind of forgot, given that we all just remember him knocking out Volkanovski, I kind of forgot how well Volkanovski was doing in that fight. It was a very, very even fight. Topuria started well. Volkanovski came really well back into it in the second half of that opening round. And, Volkanovski was having Topuria was having that bit more success in the second, particularly with the calf kicks, which I believe is going to be a bit of a problem for Max because he is very wide base and he's susceptible to those as well, as Justin Gaethje showed. But there's reasons there to be concerned stylistically for Holloway, and if Topuria can start adding landing some of those power right hands, those right hooks, overhand rights, that's going to be a big problem for Max because there ain't many people on this earth that can take a couple of those,
Yeah, 100%. It's a valid point. And I mean, Shawnee, what Max does have going for him here, in my opinion, is, we talked about what type of a fighter that Ilia Topuria is. And he would have faced a similar enough fighter in reality in Justin Gaethje, a guy who likes to move forward, likes to land those big, heavy shots as well. So, I mean, you're coming off of a camp preparing for Justin Gaethje, and then coming into a camp to prepare for Ilia Topuria, where, obviously some minor adjustments and other adjustments will have to take place, but a lot of the core and the fundamentals based around your camp, I would imagine going in against Justin Gaethje, you'll be taking a lot of that work and bringing it into this fight too, would you think?
I think so, yeah, but having said, I think Holloway will try to fight the same way, but Gaethje and Topuria couldn't be more dissimilar, really, in terms of, like, they'll both strike, but, like, I don't know. Justin Gaethje's like a piece of turf, and fucking Topuria is like the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, I would say a lot higher fight IQ and sets a lot more traps. I think Gaethje is that's what I kind of meant. Gaethje is to trudge forward and let's land if the shot is there. Where Ilia is going to use his footwork and his distance control to set you up and walk you into those shots.
I think the biggest thing, and your point is valid about the Gaethje fight, it's the preparation. The preparation led to a destruction, right? And we forget about that. Sometimes people call that fight of the year, and I rallied against that. because I don't think it's fight. I think it's one of the beatdowns of the year. I think Max Holloway beat the living shit out of him.
I'd say knockout of the year, maybe, beat down the year, but that fight was not close.
Exactly. But I think that, and the biggest part coming out of the Gaethje fight is, right, when you are someone who has lost to a champion 3 times in a row, even if you're Max Holloway, one of the greats, arguably the greatest featherweight of all time, and if he wins this weekend as well, that could very much be solidified. Check out my video over on Sherdog.com all about that. But you lose 3 times, and what happens? Your confidence goes down. Look at Kilkenny, right? They lost a couple of All-Irelands in a row. Now, they couldn't hardly win a match for
Let's not fucking bring Kilkenny into this now.
Right. Well, we lost as well, so we can't be sad. Yeah. But what happened then? He beats Gaethje, knocks him out. Performance of the year, knockout of the year contender. He's on the upward trajectory now, rather than a guy who is either in limbo, or we're talking about him, maybe not being the guy anymore. And that's the reason why we have multiple people picking Max Holloway. This is nothing got to do with a technical thing or anything like that. Like Max Holloway, we'll do a bit of MMA maths here. Volkanovski beat Holloway 3 times, beat him pretty well the last time. Topuria went in there and destroyed Holloway. Okay, as Paul says, he destroyed Volkanovski. Volkanovski did have bits and pieces, but he got knocked out in the second round. MMA maths should say that Topuria will beat Max Holloway if there isn't much grappling, which I don't think there will be between the 3 of those guys. So, you look at Topuria, and your stat you were given, Ian, Max Holloway has the 3rd most fight time ever inside it, the most strikes landed. He's over 1,000 more than anyone else. And even, he doesn't have the most strikes absorbed, but he still, to throw a strike, to be in there, to be in a fight for that long, that many times, for that many years, there's only so much you can take, as you said, Ian. And as Paul said, one of the hardest strikers we've seen, apart from Conor McGregor and Jeremy Stevens, probably the hardest hitting 145er we've seen in a very, very long time. He goes in there and he lays hands on Max Holloway. It could be a very, very different story. So I think it's going to be a tough one for Max. I think if Max hadn't beaten Justin Gaethje, let's say that fight didn't happen and he fought, I don't know, Yair Rodriguez or Arnold Allen or someone else, I know he fought them lads and beat him, but if he fought one of them again and beat him again and he was the next number 1 contender, I don't think the betting would be close. I don't think people will be picking him. I think people will be picking Topuria all over the place here. That Gaethje fight changed everything in people's minds. Has it changed everything in reality, in the technical and tactical aspects of the fight? A lot of people think it has. I'm not one of those people. I think Topuria will win, and I think he'll outbox him, and I think Holloway will struggle against someone with the. I've a lot of respect for Holloway. I think Volkanovski is one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen, but Topuria is seemingly taking this to the next level, and if he's at that level again, where he has been for the last couple of fights, I think it's going to be tough for Holloway. No, I do think this fight will go longer. I think Holloway will be smart and he'll be safe at times as well.
He's got to be safe early days here. You've got to be. I think, Volkanovski, what he didn't do was he didn't rely on his patience. And, like I said, he forced it a little bit and got found out. Now, I think Max Holloway will have seen that, Paul, and I think, he'll probably make those adjustments, but it's going to be hard to be in there for 25 minutes with a guy like Ilia Topuria and not get hit and not have it affect you as well. When we're talking about Ilia Topuria,
there is the question of the 25 minutes. I mean, we've seen Topuria do it once against Josh Emmett, who's just not remotely in his league, but we haven't seen how he looks over the longer duration against better quality opponents. Like, a lot of his fights have been shortish ones in the UFC, bar that Josh Emmett one. So there is maybe a question mark of, can he maintain the same danger, past the first couple of rounds? Like, once it goes into a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th round, is he still as dangerous? We don't know that yet. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I definitely think that we're going to find that out but it's going to be up to Max Holloway to push that pace, because if Max Holloway gets lulled into the type of fight that Ilia Topuria wants to fight, I feel that, Ilia Topuria does fight at that kind of slower, controlled pace. So I do believe it'll be Max Holloway that will have to try and bring Ilia Topuria out of his shell, create those kind of scramble situations. But, when you're looking about how this fight might go down yourself, Paul, what are you feeling? How do you think it's going to go down?
Early, I think you're going to see Topuria invest heavily in the calf kicks, same way Gaethje did. Gaethje landed a couple of really big ones off the bat against Holloway, and look, they were saying it kind of didn't really affect his performance. So he's obviously really, really durable, because they were the ones that were kind of instantly leaving redness on his leg, and I think they probably would have inhibited a lot of other fighters. I think Topuria is going to start investing in that. He's obviously going to do what he always does. He's going to throw a lot of feints and try to get you backed up near the fence. You're going to see Holloway just trying to establish that jab and try to keep just moving those 45-degree angles. And I think Topuria is going to be looking to use that right hook to counter the jab. So it's going to be a game of cat and mouse going on with that. It's just a case then of whether he can land those big shots or whether Holloway can sort of just keep him missing and keep him swinging at fresh air. It's a dangerous game to play, but he's going to do it all night, hopefully. And I have a feeling if it goes past 3 rounds, then I would be favouring Holloway, but he's going to have to withstand a hell of a storm early on.
I kind of agree on what you're saying there, but then I ask myself the question is like, how much damage will he have taken in the first 3 rounds? Because he can get to round 3, but if he's lost round 3, then he's going into rounds 4 and 5 needing a finish here, and I don't think that's the best scenario to be in when you're having to push for a finish against such a dangerous counter striker like Ilya as well. Sean, we'll finish off with this question. Obviously, you mentioned you covered the kind of overall landscape of the featherweight division over on Sherdog and who might be potential greatest of all time between Holloway, Aldo, McGregor, Volkanovski, and obviously Ilya Topuria. If Topuria goes out here in this fight and finishes Max Holloway, knocks him out, is he the greatest featherweight of all time?
No, not yet, I don't think. But he's on his way to it. Like, I think if he does beat him and especially knocks him out, that will be massive, because it looks like they're trying to do the Volkanovski fight again. And let's say, there's kind of different words coming out of Topuria's mouth depending on who interviews him, whether he actually wants to fight him in Sydney or not. But let's say he does fight him in Sydney and he beats him again. Like, Jesus, that is absolutely massive. And like, the weird thing about featherweight is everyone has kind of fought everyone, and the next guys have all beaten the past guys, with McGregor obviously aside because he went up to 155 obviously. So like, there's so many, and like, if you said Aldo right now, I don't think a lot of people disagree with you, but Aldo has lost, to Holloway, and he's lost to Volkanovski. Volkanovski has been, has lost to Topuria. What if Max beats Topuria and then he's lost to Volkanovski as well, but he's beaten Aldo? There's so many different interests decided. But the thing about it is, for Topuria, a lot of those lads will be in the rear view mirror in 6 months if he beats them. And then he's just going to go on and he'll have beaten those guys who are the greats before him. And then if he goes on and wins the next 5 or 6 in a row, which looks like, who's coming that's actually going to beat him? There doesn't seem to be anyone straight away, unless Paul Hughes goes down in weight classes and moves organization, that might be able to get in there with him.
Now we're talking. Let's make that happen.
No, I'm not starting that shit again with fucking someone has asked me in the Q&A there, what about Poatan versus Ngannou? I'm like, oh my god, are we really he just got out of the fucking UFC, are we really doing it? But anyway, Jesus, I think Topuria might be, and it's very hard to say because like, he's fighting on Saturday, and if he loses, this what I'm about to say is ridiculous, but he's one of those lads that I feel like is on the verge of greatness.
I feel that too. I've been feeling like, I've been asking myself, if he goes out there and he knocks out Max Holloway, or even if he goes out and get the win, are we going to get out of Ilya Topuria what we wanted to get out of Conor McGregor? Like, this dominant champion in featherweight division, and a guy who will eventually, he's already talking about moving up and being a threat at 155 too. Now, that's a whole different other avenue, depending on who the champion would be at the time. But I mean, it's definitely not beyond the realms of possibility here, Sean.
I don't think so. But you know what he also has? He has 35ers that are coming up possibly to fight him who are former champions. Like, Aljamain is not too far away now. If he was to come up, like Sean O'Malley could come up, maybe even Jose Aldo could make another run, and maybe we'll have that fight again. But I don't like. The problem with Topuria is Makhachev is going to be like, Makhachev is not really a 55er either. He's fucking massive. Like, he should be a 170er. If Topuria does come up, that's going to be a very, very difficult fight for him at 155. But your first point, I agree with it so much. I would love to see him be the guy who is the great at featherweight. Right? There's some divisions that isn't really a thing, but if he becomes the guy who is the undisputed GOAT at heavyweight, it would be unbelievable. Now he's one title win, so let's
Long way to
not
go.
go overboard. We've done that with Adesanya and Usman and Junior Dos Santos and Conor McGregor and others beforehand, but because he beat a guy so good as Volkanovski, and if he beats a guy so good like Holloway, you know, it just brings him up as a fighter. And look, what do MMA fans want now more than ever before? I think it's for lads to go on runs. We've seen the double champ. We've seen people go up. The problem with people moving weight classes, they usually lose, right? And it just changes everything. And look at Volkanovski, right? He was on his way to being the greatest featherweight of all time, went up. Okay, there were two. The first fight, but then he gets knocked out. Then he gets knocked out again down at 145. And now he's kind of in this limbo. Okay, he might get another title fight, but I think have those big fights. Let the people come to you. Be the champion at 145. And if he beats Holloway, I think that's what he should be doing. He should be, you know, going for it. Like, and as well, you're Topuria, right? You're so good defensively as well. You can probably have 3 or 4 fights in a year, get through it pretty well, and then you can talk about moving weight classes. So you can do, you know, you made the point, Ian, and it's a great point. You could, like, could he do both? Could he be the one to actually do both, to dominate in a weight class and then go up and do it? Maybe he could, but as I said, a lot of people picking Max Holloway, so he might even get a start. You might even get a start.
First big hurdle comes this Saturday in the main event. I'm really looking forward to this one. It's going to answer a lot of questions. And I'm looking forward to the co-main event too, Paul. I mean, Robert Whittaker coming in here against Khamzat Chimaev. And to be honest, for many years, this idea has been thrown in front of us. They've been flirting with the idea. They've tried to put this fight on already, and Chimaev has come out. And I'm sitting here, and I never thought I'd be thinking the thoughts that I'm thinking, is that I'm actually fancying Robert Whittaker in this fight as opposed to Khamzat Chimaev. Based off what I've seen in recent times with Chimaev, his health troubles, you know, inability to make weight. It's been a very, very turbulent career for a guy who was labeled the next best thing at one stage when he burst onto the scene in the UFC, Paul.
He was, and he's burned a lot of his bridges. He's pissed a lot of people off. I mean, he ended up, wasn't he supposed to be fighting like Nate Diaz, and then he ended up fighting a weight class up against Kevin Holland, all over the place. And he acted like he didn't give a shit about missing weight. And I think he missed by a sizable amount. And
9 pounds.
Yeah, and then the end, the fight with Usman. So the overriding feeling when people look back at that fight is, yeah, he didn't look great at all. He looked like he had cardio issues. But
I scored that fight for Usman 29-28, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. But here's the thing: that first round, he double-legged Usman. He did what he does. He chained his takedown attempts. I think he was on his third one. Eventually got Usman to the floor with still not even a minute gone on the clock. He had him sprawled out, belly down on the canvas. And like, he was very, very close to finishing him. Like, he's dangerous as hell, at least for a round, you know what I mean? And the evidence that we've seen is that in certain fights, he hasn't been able to carry that going forward. But when he was fighting a lower level of opponent, he didn't need to, because he was running through, you know, the Leach and guys like that in no time at all. He was absolutely decimating the likes of Jared Mearshart and those guys.
That was also a weight down, and with Usman coming up in weight too, you do have a significant size advantage. I do feel that, you know, there's definitely a possibility that he does it against Robert Whittaker, but like, I think what you're trying to allude to, and I think the big question is can he maintain that throughout the fight?
Yeah, that's it. Like, I think for Whittaker, the plan would be get through a round, and then let's see where we are, because it's 5 rounds, this one as well. It's a 5-round fight, which, I mean, if it goes past 6-7 minutes, the odds have got to be swinging massively towards Whittaker. But I'm just saying, basically, in those first 3-4 minutes, don't forget how dangerous Chimaev is. You know what I mean? I think overall, if it is a longer fight, I would also be favoring Whittaker, because I think he's a very well-rounded fighter. But yeah, I have big questions over whether he can withstand the hailstorm that's coming his way in those first couple of minutes against Chimaev.
You know, yeah, I think he has the ability to do it, to be honest, and he's going to have to be very, very safe, Shawnee, when he is doing it. And I'll let you kind of talk about Khamzat Chimaev as well in a minute, but I want to ask you the question: where do you stand with Robert Whittaker, and where do you believe he is at in his career right now? Because if we're being honest, he massively underperformed and looked absolutely shot against Dricus du Plessis, who is now the champion. I mean, that win or that loss looks a hell of a lot better now than what it did back then. But he looked like he gave up. He looked very sloppy on the feet. He didn't look good in the grappling exchanges in that fight. Came out, put on a great performance against Paulo Costa, and again absolutely lit up Ikram Ashkelov in his last fight to prove that he's no gatekeeper in the middleweight division. He still is a legit title contender. But I guess this is the ultimate proven test for him. Where do you stand with Robert Whittaker right now and where he's at in his career?
It's funny because I agree with you. The du Plessis fight, may sound harsh, but I agree. He didn't look great, and it was one of those fights you're thinking, when was it last year? So he's only 32 years of age at that time as well, only 33 years of age, but a lot of rounds in the bank, and you're thinking, is he going to come back? Now he did come back and look very good, right, in his next two fights. Again, he's fighting Costa, who is massively overrated, and Askarov, it was a good fighter, but that was only 2 minutes. So how much can you really take from it? But at the same time, I don't think he is shot, right? I think you can write it off as a terrible, terrible night at the office, and maybe he massively underestimated Dricus du Plessis, which is something Robert Whittaker has never done before. Like, he is the master of, fighting those Yoel Romero fights. He sticks to a plan and he takes people away from what they are great at. He stops them. He's so smart. And he just couldn't do that against Dricus du Plessis. Now, again, is that an off night, or when he takes another rise, is that going to be an issue for him as well? I suppose we'll find out on Saturday night. I think, this is so interesting. One of those fights that there's so much intrigue around it, because Whittaker, again, we're talking about Chimaev coming up to 185. Whittaker is a former welterweight. Let's not forget that as well. So he's not the biggest 185er in the world, but he was a champion for a good while. So he is a genuine 185er at the same time. I'd be my biggest piece of intrigue here is look at Chimaev, right? And you look at the last couple of fights, you mentioned them. He fought Usman, Kevin Holland, Burns, Li Zhengliang, and then all the rest of the guys who he didn't take a punch against in like 4 fights in a row. The one thing, and I watched a fight of his recently. Let me just see if I can see who it is. But I can't. Who is it? I don't know. Anyway, one of his earlier fights in his career, he was fighting in PFL or somewhere, and I watched the fight, and he was the exact same fighter back then. He comes out and he just went to go. I think it was Marko Kisic went to go straight through him, and he almost got fucking hurt. And then he gets to finish. The way Chimaev does it. My biggest piece of intrigue is, can he adjust? Can he change? Can he be a bit of a different fighter? Can he make you think that he's going to be the mad bastard gun in there and go out and be a bit of a mad bastard for 30 seconds, but then boom, underneath, take it down, get on top, stay on top, get your position, land a few elbows, keep you down, hold you against the fence. Can he, even if it's getting his striking going, can he just get his jab going? Can he roll underneath a few shots and not all be bluster? And that usually happens, when lads go out to 5 rounds. We talked about Topuria fighting 5 rounds, and look at him. You mentioned the fight against Josh Emmett. His first 5-round fight, he went 5 rounds because people fight differently going there. And I know it's a little bit different for Chimaev, but this is his raising in levels. And I know he fought Usman last time out, but he's fighting Robert Whittaker here. If he wins this, he's going to be fighting for a title. I think he needs to have learned from that Usman fight. As you said, Ian, you scored it against him. It was a majority decision. One of the judges didn't score it for him either. I think the adjustments from Chimaev are massive here. The other thing is as well, he's suffered massively with health issues over the last while. 5 rounds could it be an issue for him? We know, like, he had long COVID or whatever it might be. His lungs are the same. He looks to have put on a lot of muscle as well. He's no longer kind of the tall, gangly guy. He's a muscular guy. How much of a benefit is that to him over 5 rounds? And will that actually help him? Maybe, because he'll have to adjust his game and not fight the mad bastardry that we're used to seeing him fighting. I think there's so many unknowns. Like, Chimaev was one of those fighters, right? And I just said it a few minutes ago. You know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to come in, he's going to run across, and he's going to be mad. I don't know.
It can't be that way. It's like a storm in a teacup, but you need to cool the jets here, because he flat out gassed out against Usman, and if he goes out and fight, because Paul, that's what he's been used to doing, right? And you can get away with that style of fighting, but as you progress up the rankings, you get into the upper echelon. That style, as we've kind of half seen, and he hasn't been punished for it yet, It just simply doesn't work. You can't go out, like Sean said, and be a madman and bust all of your cardio into round one and not get a finish, because guess what? You're standing right across from Robert Whittaker again. You've got another 20 minutes of action possibly facing ahead of you. So I think maybe that adjustment needs to come in, efficiency levels and how much he's putting into his techniques, which will increase his cardio over the course of 25 minutes.
Yeah, it's like when a team wins the championship in England and they score 100 goals and they get 100 points and then they go up to the Premier Division. You can't keep playing the same way because it's not going to work up there, lads. So then you see them invariably just getting shredded every week, and they're sitting in the bottom three in October, and it's like, oh, now we need to change.
And then they get the Bayern Munich manager's job. That's what.
Shout out, Quilcha.
That's exactly where I was going with that one. But yeah, I mean, he absolutely needs to mature as a fighter for sure. Like, he's got all the tools to be, the best middleweight in the world, but it's about, things like the game plan and, like you said, their efficiency. And if history tells us that if you are going to win titles and defend titles, you're going to have to fight 25-minute fights more often than not, and you're going to have to probably be in shape to do that a couple of times a year, and that's something that we haven't seen from him. There's a couple of factors with the fight as well that kind of make me look at Whittaker and think, yeah, he could absolutely get this done, because we've seen him in there with the likes of Yoel Romero. We've seen him in there stylistically. I remember looking at his Vettori fight. Vettori fights in that southpaw stance too and relies heavily on takedowns, and Whittaker is shorter than Chimaev, which, if you're trying to take somebody down and they fight with a low base like Whittaker did in that Vettori fight, it makes it just even a couple of percent harder. Do you know what I mean? It does make things trickier because it's so difficult to get to their hips. What Chimaev likes to do is he likes to just drive straight at those hips. We saw against Usman at the start of the fight, he just shot straight down, blasted straight through to those hips. But when someone's sitting in that lower base and they're shorter, they can down block, they can sprawl that little bit easier. And it's something that's probably going to serve Whittaker well. He's going to have to rely heavily on that, like we talked about Chimaev coming up for you, formerly being a welterweight, but Whittaker's a couple of inches shorter than him and has, a shorter reach as well. So yeah, it's an interesting fight. I think Whittaker overall has the better quality, but it's just, it's like that first fight, like that Topuria fight. It's, can you withstand that initial assault, that barrage? It's very tricky.
Yeah, it is, and that's what makes this fight very, very interesting to me as well, to see. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we weren't expecting a kind of a dominant start for Khamzat, but the big question for me is can he maintain it throughout? And I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure over the course of 5 rounds that he can. But we could be looking at a situation where he has done enough in the early stages of the fight to hang on. But Robert Whittaker is going to have that dog about him coming into this one, that's for sure. And it'll be, I think this could be a case of who wants it more towards the end. And I'm very excited to see who that's going to be. Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic in the 205-pound division. Shawnee, Ankalaev is beating everybody except his mother now at this stage, still not getting a title shot here. Surely a win over Alexander Rakic makes him undeniable for the next shot at Alex Pereira.
I wouldn't be so sure, to be honest. You never know. He should have been undeniable. I was recording a betting show beforehand, and I was looking through some of the bets and thinking the reasoning around some of them. And do you know what I really think in this fight? I think Ankalaev is going to go out and have to get a finish. I think he is going to go out and have to say, look, this guy Rakic he's a dangerous guy. He's one of the best knockouts in UFC history. He's a big bastard. I think Ankalaev is going to have to use his wrestling, but I think he's going to have to get the finish in there as well. Never won a fight by submission. 18 fights, never won 19 fights, even never won by submission. 20 fights. 21 fights actually. The draw.
Come on, Sean, 22 fights?
No, 21. 21. Is it? 21. Never won by submission, so he's going to have to get him out of there. You never know with Rakic. Rakic is one of those guys. He has all the talent in the world at 32 years of age. He hasn't won a fight in 3 years. A lot of injuries. Lost to Prochazka and Blachowicz. Look, will he be taken down? Probably. What happens after that? Right? Because let's be honest here. We all know the way the UFC matchmake and the way they have been matchmaking over the last few years, unless you're going in there finishing lads, unless you're going in there looking absolutely destructive, there's no guarantee. Like eventually you'll get one. Yeah, look, if he wins here, look, he's probably getting a title shot. Well, maybe not. Maybe he'll have to win another one. Maybe
I think if he goes out here and gets the win, we're going to hear an announcement, and it's going to be Alex Bahia versus Tom Aspinall in the heavyweight division.
Quite good. But there was even someone was talking about even the middleweight. They were on about having announcing Strickland against Duplessis before the middleweight fight happens. Could you see something light heavyweight happening as well? We know how Bahia likes to turn it around. So if I'm Ankalaev here, it's taken out of your hands, really. I don't think if he goes in here and he decisions Rakic, they'll be saying Rakic hasn't won a fight in 3 years. He's lost 3 in a row and he still can't finish him. Right? Does Ankalaev does he deserve it? That's what people will be saying. And also they'll be saying, right, he's won 2 fights in a row. He did no contest with Johnny Walker before that. He drew with Blachowicz before that. He's not like he's on this big long run, even though he had a big long run before that and he drew. But I think that draw for the championship, put together with him not being the most exciting guy in the world, although he does have a good few finishes in there as well.
Well, I think it was the stink fest that was, the Jan Blachowicz fight, which I didn't think was all that bad. But
Dana White hated it.
Dana White hated it, and I mean that's the be all and end all, Paul. When it comes to, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks. If Dana and the matchmakers and you don't want to appease them, you're not going to get the due rewards, and it's unfortunate for Rakic. But I definitely agree with Shawnee here. He's got to go out there. He's got to put on a performance, and he's got to get Rakic out of there, and he's got to go on and make himself undeniable in that division and call out someone like Alex Bahia. And, I think he has the ability to get that done. Do you?
He does, but I don't think I wouldn't be confident in him actually doing it. I think he's going to win all day on this one. I think he's just comfortably a better fighter than Rakic. Rakic is dangerous, but he's better in all areas. I think he just fights with that. He has a very safe kind of style, and like if a finish presents itself, he'll take it, like we saw in that last one against Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker was being ridiculously wild and just taking risks that he just didn't need to take. He was throwing like just crazy stuff and dancing around doing capoeira and throwing axe kicks, and he was just asking to be knocked out, and he got knocked out. Like, so that's Johnny Walker for you. But he Ankalaev just keeps calm, keeps measured, stood in front of him. He throws a lovely, from that southpaw stance, throws that lovely straight left to the body. It's the one, I think he hurt Johnny Walker with that. Remember in the first fight, and then Johnny Walker jumped at him with the flying knee. So that shot is really good for him. But, against a fighter who takes unnecessary risks, it's very easy to make that finish present itself. But, I think he'll be happy enough to coast to a 30-27 or a 29-28, which is the problem. And it's not just he's not a boring fighter at all. What I'm saying is that he just doesn't go gung-ho for victories, and
doesn't take any risks.
That's the type of thing.
Case of the Fabian
not
Edwards.
only that, Ian. Yes, there's not only that, there's also the fact that who here has ever heard him speak or say anything?
Yeah, I know. And that's not the way it should be, but that's the way it is, I guess.
That's it. Like Alex can speak or say anything, we don't hear him, but the man,
he goes out there and knocks motherfuckers dead, though. That's the problem.
He knocks motherfuckers dead, and he's got his walk out, and he just has stone face, stare across the cage. He just has that. Anderson Silva didn't really speak English, but it was I back, that type of shit. But yeah, those guys have just that majesty, that persona. They pull shit off, and everyone wants to see them fight. People aren't lining up to see Magomed Ankalaev fight, and that's the issue. The UFC have a golden goose now with Pereira, and the things that they've been able to get, the cards and events they've been able to save just by picking up the bat phone and calling up Poatan. Like, that's all gone if Ankalaev goes in there and nullifies him and walks away with a boring decision victory. What the hell do they do with Magomed Ankalaev?
That's another layer in this kind of fight and this story with Ankalaev as well. Is that it's very possible that he is the kryptonite to Alex Bahia's kind of powers, to be honest. And there's a lot of politics in the fight game, boys, and we're right stuck in the middle of it with Ankalaev as well. Let's move on. 145-pound division, Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige. Shawnee, Leroy Murphy's kind of UFC career has been very frustrating, start, stop. I think the type of fighter that he is and how good he is, he hasn't really gotten to where I feel he deserves to be yet. And the problem is now time is running out, obviously coming in here in these last couple of fights on a big win streak. We saw big wins over Makwan Americani, Gabriel Santos, Josh Culibao, Edson Barbosa being a big one. Comes in here against Dan Ige. Tricky opponent, but definitely a winnable fight for Leroy Murphy, in my opinion. And this is the big one. I think this trusts him up into a couple of big fights if he can get the job done. But injuries, pullouts, and everything, have really stood in his way and his progression in the UFC so far.
Do you know what I learned today? Leroy Murphy is older than Danny.
Wow. Yeah, there you go.
That's mad. So, time running out. I think that's a part of his life. 33 years of age. There's a lot of young guys going to be coming up. I think now is the time. But I do think it is his time. I think he's, as you said, he's blowing a bit of hot and cold. He's sometimes one of these guys that I think, you mentioned Fabian Edwards a few minutes ago, but a little bit of petrol left in the tank, after the drive, and that has to change, right? You can't. It's all well and good saying, right, I'm getting through these fights and I'm winning them, and he is, and I have a lot of respect for Leroy Murphy. I'm being ultra critical here. You have to let it go. You have to let guys like Denny know. You have to let guys from 15 to 7 in the rankings know. Right, it's all well and good. You get to a 5-round fight, you get to a main event or whatever, adjusting your game and fighting more safe and just getting the win. You have to beat these guys and you have to prove you're the next guy in the UFC today. And I think that's what Leroy Murphy needs to do here. He needs to make a statement. I think he's better than Danny everywhere. I think he's a better striker than him. I think he's better on the ground, better grappler, better, stronger, hits harder, and all that. But Danny, we saw it. I always mix himself and Rob Fonta, but we saw Rob Fonta the weekend doing what them sort of lads do, them kind of gutsy veterans. They stick in there, even if you win the first minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes, they never go away and they're always going to have to be there. And you're either going to have to put them out or continuously beat them and adjust to them. So
we're talking about a guy in Dan Ige here as well, Sean. He took his last fight on a couple of hours' notice and still went to a decision against a very dangerous Diego Lopez as well. So, I mean, he's coming in here off the back of a full camp, and I agree with you too. Like, I think Leroy Murphy is the better fighter overall, but sometimes he has an inability to go out there and show us, you know what I mean? And if he doesn't do that against Dan Ige, he's going to be in trouble here, I think.
Yeah, I do think he'll win the fight, but it's a very losable fight at the same time. And like sometimes you're in a fight like this and you're better off not trying to lose, if you get me that way. Like, so some soccer games you're better off putting 5 behind the ball and trying to get 1 goal. Other times you're better off trying to get fucking 5 goals going all out. That's, I think, what he needs to do here. I think he needs to go for Ige. Like, Ige is not the biggest knockout artist in the world. Only 33% of his wins have been by knockout. I think it's a chance worth taking. Even if you take him down and rip a few elbows into him and try to get him out of there, that I think Leroy Murphy needs to do that. I think, like, if we look at the X's and O's, I'm sure Paul will touch on it, but like, I think the X's and O's can all go for Leroy Murphy. I really do think they can. But it's the intangibles almost. I think he has to up it. The effort, the fucking will to finish, and the will to excite almost has to be there for him this Saturday, I think.
Indeed, Paul. Going to the X's and O's of this fight, I mean, we know what we're going to get pretty much from both of these fighters. I think Leroy Murphy has shown us, he's equipped to deal with a fight on the feet. Also, we've seen him in recent fights take the fight down with Dan Ige. We know what Dan wants to do. He wants to stand and bang. He wants to establish his jab and fire off his right hand as much as possible. Doesn't really kick all of that much. And, I think for Murphy, that kind of plays in his favor. Unless, Dan comes out here and does something extraordinary different, I think he knows what is going to be in front of him here. And, I'm wondering, are you feeling similar to myself and Shawnee? Do you think that, Leroy Murphy just has to go out here and take this fight by the scruff of the neck and bring it home?
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely just got that little bit more than his opponent in pretty much most areas of the game. But where I think he has that sort of X factor over him is the reach, the precision and the hand speed. So I think if he just establishes that, his distance rather than letting Ige get inside and get close to him and make it scrappy and make it ugly, and he'll do that by getting the shots off first, like Shawnee says. Put the boot down, start throwing some bombs rather than, letting Ige pressure him and getting involved in this sort of scrappy, messy fight. Just start firing out that jab, that overhand right, and he's got that reach advantage. He's quicker than his opponent. Yeah, it's his fight to win, but he has to perform. He has to step up to the plate here.
Yeah, he definitely does. Opening fight. Go ahead, Johnny. I thought you were going to say something there.
I'm only coughing there. I'm dying with the flu. Go on, keep going.
Sorry, yeah, no bothers. Let's start. Main card opener: Shara Bullet Magomedov versus Armen Petrosian. Great fight. This is potential to be a great fight in the striking department, but I feel Petrosian is probably going to get the better of him early stages here, Shawnee, and take the fight down. With Magomedov, obviously a lot of hype around him coming into this fight and his previous fights as well. I think Magomedov, this is a good stylistic fight for him, a fight that he can win, but I feel he's a fighter who's going to get found out sooner rather than later, to be honest, in this division, but I'm not sure if it's going to be on Saturday night.
I'll tell you, we have very similar thoughts on Shara Bullet. I think it is. I think Petrosian can beat him. I don't know if he will now, but he's a good price as well to win this fight. I think this is your classic case of underrated versus overrated. I think Petrosian was one of the most underrated guys in that division, although he doesn't always show up, right? But when he is at his best, I think he's very good. I think Shara Bullet, good. And I think he could be good, right? I like in 10 fights time, he could be one of the best in the world, but a lot of things have to change, I think, for him. At the moment, I just think like he hasn't met that level of competition yet. Petrosian, no, look, Petrosian within his last fight got taken down and choked out in a round. So look, Shara Bullet could push him against the cage here as he tends to do in a lot of these fights. Maybe get a couple of takedowns. I don't think he's as good a wrestler as, some of the old Dagestanis. He does a bit of lethway and stuff like that. And he's as much of a striker, I think, and a well-rounded fighter. But I think Petrosian's a well-rounded fighter as well, but he's, as the second name would suggest, he's obviously very good on the feet. And what he did to Christian Era Duncan and a few others, I think if he can do a similar thing to Shara Bullet here, I definitely think he can win this fight. And I think, the bet lines are pretty close. But, I think there's a possibility that Shara Bullet has improved an awful lot and will win this fight. But I also think there's a possibility that Shara Bullet is overrated and Petrosian can come in there. Here's the thing. You talked about the start of the fight there, Ian. And I think if Petrosian can get through the first 3 minutes of the fight unscathed, and when I say unscathed, like not get taken down and not have a big shot landed against him and it's a little bit even, I think when he gets into his rhythm, when he gets his jab going and his shots going, I think he's a really good fighter. Yeah. And if he can get into that rhythm around then, I think he'll get into it for the rest of the fight and probably win a decision. Shara Bullet has to get him out of that, make it a striking match, make it a grappling match, make it a clinch match, all of those things. There's a possibility he does it, but I like Petrosian here. I like Petrosian to get this fight into the open, land his jab, and win the decision probably.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like, a battle for confidence here. It's the confidence in stuffing a couple of takedowns where you can open up on the feet if you're Petrosian. And it's the confidence for Magomedov here, Paul, for me, is that if he can close the distance and take the fight down, that might build his confidence, obviously, but definitely take the fight away from Petrosian and kind of, flatline his confidence in some ways. How do you see the fight going?
I'm leaning in with Shawnee on this one. I think Petrosian is potentially a real problem for Sharapov. For Shara Bullet, should I say, not Sharapov, but I've been watching like Shara and I'm not buying it. You know what I mean? They're trying to, they're obviously with his card placement, with where he's fighting, the cards he's getting fights on.
They can't fucking put him anywhere else if we're being real.
Anywhere else, exactly. But they're obviously hoping that, this guy looks a bit unique and, we can market this guy. Look at the three lads he's beaten. I'll just pull up his record here. He's beaten Bruno Silva, Antonio Trocoli, and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk in his three UFC fights. You wouldn't get three easier middleweight fights than those three lads. Their combined losses over the last few years would make your eyes water. Like those lads are losing to anyone and everyone that they're going in there against, more or less. I think Bruno Silva lost his last three.
One lad might say they'd lose a fight with themselves if they looked in the mirror.
And
Yeah,
Bruno
oh,
Silva,
Bruno's-
Team Sheehan's Bruno Silva, that is there.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jesus.
he's lost 3 in a row, Sean. Oleksiejczuk has lost three in a row, and 4 of his last 5. And Antonio Trocoli is he's the guy that was initially it was him that came in to replace Joelton Luderbach the last day against Magomed, wasn't it? And so like he just wasn't really up to the job either. Those lads are just not. They're not real opponents. Like if you're going to be talked about as a promising fighter in that division, so this is the first difficult test that he's in there with. Petrosian is a really talented Muay Thai fighter too. Do you know what I mean? His striking, I think, is going to. It could well be problematic, I think, for Bullet. So I'm interested to see how it looks. Look, he might step up to the plate here and actually put on a performance to be proud of. He was on the ground for stages with Oleksiejczuk, who's a striker. He hits hard, Oleksiejczuk, but he's not fantastic at all. Like we've seen him get strangled, and Shara was on the ground with him and couldn't do anything to him. And it was
like I mean, I'm looking at Petrosian's last fight, and it was a submission loss to Rodolfo Vieira. Obviously, a very
no shame there.
Yeah, no shame whatsoever there. But you're getting taken down, you're getting dominated, and you're getting submitted in round 1. And I think where Sharon might not have the submission skills of Rodolfo Vieira, he definitely has enough about him to close the distance here and get the fight down. And I feel if he wears on Petrosian a little bit, I think he can take this fight by decision. I think if this is a straight striking battle, he could get caught at any moment. But I honestly feel that he's either going to time a takedown off a counter, or he's going to get hit with a big shot and he's going to turn him into a wrestler. And I think that's the best way for him to get the win in that fight. A weird, they normally put a banger. I mean, this has potential to be a banger, but I don't think this is going to be a banger. I think that Shara is probably going to turn what could be an exciting fight on paper into a boring fight, and he's going to be fed to the wolves eventually because of that by the UFC matchmakers. So that's my prediction. You can clip that when I'm right. How can I protect you in this crazy world? Ibo Aslan taking on Rafael Crucera. And I just wanted to say that, so I have nothing else to talk about that fight.
I made that exact same joke on the fucking bench that I just did. So.
No way. I remember when Aslan was last fighting because I put up a tweet about that too. I was having great. Brilliant, but that's all about I have to say about that fight. I mean, Crucera's coming in off a couple of finishes. This is his UFC debut. I think Aslan was in a pretty exciting fight in his last fight as well. It was a messy one, but it was an exciting fight nonetheless against Anton Turkali. This has potential to be a bit of fun. I mean, two guys like to stand and bang. It'll probably be a knockout there. I'm going to run through the rest of the prelims cards really quick. We'll circle back just for a couple of quick thoughts before we wrap up. That fight is in the 205-pound division at 170. Jeff Neal versus Rafael Dos Anjos. Low-key banger here. Looking forward to that one. Makaibek or Oralbai versus Mateus Rebecki is in the 155-pound division. I remember Oralbai as well, a kind of a brute. He's a brute of a fella, yeah. So I fancy him against Rebecki in that fight. Abus Magomedov takes on Bruno Ferreira in the 185-pound division. Ferreira coming in obviously as a big heavy hitter at 12-1. Kennedy Nchukwu taking on Chris Barnett in the heavyweight division. Nchukwu going up in weight class there after a couple of losses in the light heavyweight division. Fard Bashra taking on Victor Hugo. Great fight there in the 135-pound division. Bruno Silva versus Ishmael Nuradiev at 185. Renat Fakhretdinov versus Carlos Leal at 170. Another great fight, I think, to open up the card as well in the welterweight division. Paul, circling around on all of those fights, anyone that stands out to you in particular?
Yeah, the one that jumps off the page is Hands of Steel and RDA, isn't it? That's the two biggest names there on the prelim card. And I think RDA is just like that lad, when you're having a house party and you want to wrap up and there's someone on the couch you just won't fucking leave. That's him. How long has he been around the UFC just beating people? And I think he's going to do it again this weekend.
Get off that fucking couch with you.
The sun's coming up. Everyone left. Who brought this lad?
That's the sure sign. When you see the sun creeping in through the curtain, it's time to go. It's time to wrap it up at that stage. Shawnee, when you're looking at the prelims, anything that you're looking forward to?
Well, that's what we talked about earlier. Total fight time. Max Holloway number 3. Who's number 1? Rafael dos Anjos. Oh,
there
yeah.
you go.
There's a few. Oralboy definitely stand out to me. He's an absolute beast, and he's a guy who could make waves in that 155-pound division in the future. I think Nchuku versus Barnett's going to be a banger. Fakhretdinov versus Carlos El Miranda, very interesting fight. Like Carlos El Miranda has been in PFL for a good few of the seasons, and he's caused a few shocks over there as well. Put on a few good fights, a lot of experience for Fakhretdinov has as well. 22-1-1, a very, very good record over there. So yeah, looking forward to it. And then these Basharat brothers, like there's going to be a big fight for one of them pretty soon, and maybe one or both of them are going to go to a certain level, but a massive fight there, I think, for Farid. But yeah, good stuff. It'll be interesting to see what Dos Anjos looks like, right? Because going up the welterweight, he's talked about not being a lightweight for a good long time, even though I think he's still ranked there. And Jeff Neal is one of those guys who I think at his best is very good and very dangerous. But if you're Dos Anjos, I think you can get the wrestling going there, maybe put him against the cage for long periods and pull him down one or two times. I think that's a winnable fight. But as Paul says, RDA, maybe it's just a couple of steps too far for him. But, do you know what I think about the undercard? I think there'll be a good few decisions. I think there'll be a couple of entertaining fights. But by the time we get to the main card, I think we'll probably be in need of a few good ones. Let's put it that way.
Featherweight greatness is on the horizon for either Ilia Topuria or Max Holloway in that main event. Very excited to see what goes down in that fight. Also, Hamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. Big fights early on Saturday. Don't forget if you're in Europe, and I'll be having me breakfast and probably I'll have to maybe have a fry up as anyone who listened to the audio here. I shared my plans for few scoops on Friday night now, so I could be nursing a sore head. But I do like going for a few drinks and watching fights a little bit hungover, because whenever bad you feel, you just have to put yourself in the shoes of the fighters that were going in there, and they're putting their bodies way more on the line than what I will be on Friday night. Just
you never know, some of the drinking sessions are gone.
Never know. Could be still at. I could be still at, boys. It could be some wild tweets going up there now on Saturday morning. Just a final note on this card before I wrap up. No women fights on the card as well. No surprises there.
Where's this fight on again? Where's this on again?
Abu Dhabi. So I think that tells its own story there. I just wanted to make note of that before we wrap up. But enjoy the fights. We'll be back for a full breakdown on Monday, on Tuesday in some areas. And I'm really looking forward to breaking down this card. Really excited for the co-main and main event. Go and follow Paul Brown at BJJ Browner on social media, Paul.
That's me,
and
yeah.
At Sean BA, at Sean Sheehan BA, at O'Neill MMA. Enjoy the fights. Enjoy the fights. We'll chat to you soon, folks. And